the heavenly king versus the earthly king. Rosh Hashanah day 25784. The coronation of King Charles was based on the coronation of Shlomo HaMelech, King Solomon. Yet there was something missing from the coronation of Charles, which was present at the coronation of Shlomo. Yes, it had the hymn Sadok the Priest, composed by George Frederick Handel for the coronation of George II in 1727. It opened Sadok the Priest and Nathan the Prophet anointed Solomon king. Still, there was something missing from the coronation of Charles that was at Shlomo's, and that was the blast of the shofar. Today, we coronate God as the King of the world. We proclaim Hayom Harat Olam. Today is the birthday of the world, and it's accompanied by the blast of a shofar. The blast celebrates God's dominion over his kingdom, the world. The odd thing is, the Torah and Haftorah readings we read over Rosh Hashanah do not reflect kingship. You'd expect to read about the king creating the world, or perhaps a mighty act of valor by the king, the splitting of the sea and the defeating of the Egyptians, but instead we read about barren women. Sarah in the Torah reading, Hannah in the Haftorah reading, and then on the second day we read Akedat Yitzhak, the binding and near sacrifice of Isaac. There's a lack of pomp here. Why is there this lack of pomp? Let's go back to Kriyat Hayam Suf, the splitting of the sea, for a minute. After God saved the people, they immediately go to complaining that there's no food. It's as if they believed them God had freed them from Egypt simply to let them die in the wilderness of starvation. Sounds bizarre. If somebody freed you, you think they're going to let you starve right after they free you? Perhaps it's just a case of, what have you done for me lately? But actually, there's a legitimate concern the people have here. Kings like to win battles, they like parades and pomp, but are they really concerned about the little guy? What the people are really saying here is, we know God wanted to defeat the Egyptians because it makes him look high and mighty, but does he really care about us? Were we just his pawns, which he used to glorify himself? 2016, Eric Cantor, who was then the House Majority Leader, lost in a primary because the voters in his district felt he had lost touch with them. He was spending too much time on K Street with the lobbyist. He had lost touch with the average person in his district. God is modeling good leadership. Good leaders are concerned about the little guys. The Torah reading from the first day demonstrates this. We have an elderly couple who is unable to have a child. Haftorah, same thing. Hannah is unable to have a child. God gives these people children. Turns out that the high and mighty king does concern himself with the little guy. On the second day, we read Akedat Yitzhak, the binding and near sacrifice of Isaac. What's the connection here? The Akedah is rightfully understood as a polemic against human sacrifice, but there's a lot more to the story. There's another message as well. God is saying, that kid I gave you, Abraham and Sarah, that child is not your property to do as you wish. Having children is a privilege that I bestow upon you. Now, to us moderns, this is a no-brainer, but in the ancient world, it was exactly the opposite. Kids were like baseball cards. They were commodities in which you could trade for your own benefit. You wanted rain, you'd make a deal with the gods. You say to the gods, I need some rain, I need you to give me some rain, so here's what I'm going to do for you. I'm going to send you up a corned beef sandwich in the form of my firstborn son. You'll have a bite to eat, and you'll give me rain. In Aristophanes' show, The Birds, humans literally bring the gods to their knees by refusing to sacrifice to them, and the gods starve. Our creation story tells us exactly the opposite. God is above nature. You can't bribe him with food because he's not dependent on you. God is not for sale. You have no leverage. Remember we posed the question, why don't we read about the creation story today on Rosh Hashanah? Well, in a roundabout way, Akedat Yitzhak, the sacrifice of Isaac, really completes the creation story. It's telling us that not only are the adults, Adam and Eve, created B'Tselem Elohim, in the image of God, but their children are as well. Children are not your property because God is also their parent. The third most popular movie of the summer, the first two being Barbie and Oppenheimer, obviously, but the third most popular was The Sound of Freedom. It's about the human trafficking of kids, and the catchphrase was, God's children are not for sale. This is the message of the Akedah, and this is the foundation of child labor laws and all laws which defend against the exploitation of others. Our king, unlike all too many human kings, is not just concerned about collecting taxes and conquest. He cares about the lowly in the provinces. Today in politics, it's fashionable to portray yourself as an outsider. What are you really saying when you say you're an outsider? You're saying, I'm not one of the elite. I'm just like you, the little people. Well, as Kohelet says, Ve'en kol chadash tachat hashemesh. Nothing new under the sun, nothing new to see here. Despite the fact that the prophet Samuel, was anti-monarchical, he endorsed Shaul, Saul, as the first king of Israel because Shaul, or Saul, was an outsider. Despite being big and handsome and looking like a king, he didn't want the job. Though Shaul was conspicuous, he wanted to be inconspicuous and anonymous. When it was time to proclaim him as the king, we're told, Hinehu nechba et el hakelim. He was hiding among the baggage. He was in the closet. He didn't want the job. He was a humble guy, willing to take advice even from his servants. This is the man who God wants to be his representative, not somebody who wants pomp and parades, but a humble, benign person that cares about God's other children. As we say, you want to give power to those who don't want power. And later on when Saul becomes power hungry, when he becomes upset, the women sing, Saul has slain his thousands, David his tens of thousands. He's fired for emulating the self-aggrandizing style of the other human kings. Long before the Greeks came along with the polis, the Torah was already laying the groundwork for democracy. Nobody has absolute power because God is the ultimate source of authority and chooses to limit the power of the king in order to ensure that the people are empowered. And this message has been heeded by our best leaders. Our greatest Navi, our greatest prophet, was Moshe, who's referred to as Anav Ma'od, very humble. George III, when he found out that George Washington was going to resign his commission after the American Revolution and go home to his farm, said in stunned awe, if he does that, he will be the greatest man in the world. He couldn't believe Washington was going to step down and let go of his power. Pirkei Avot famously asks, Ezehu Gibor, who is truly strong? And answers, not those who conquer others, but Hakovesh et Yitziro, he who conquers his own desires, including his desire to abuse power. The statement the quote has been attributed to Lincoln that the test of somebody's character is not their ability to overcome adversity. Many people overcome adversity, but one's ability to restrain himself from abusing power when he's given it. Or to put it this way, you could learn more about somebody from the concession speech they give than the victory speech they give. Today we recite the Piyut, Melech Elyon. We juxtapose our benign Melech Elyon, our heavenly king, to the Melech Evyon, the human, lowly king. These kings all too often have failed to overcome their Yetzer Hara, their wicked desire to gain power, and instead of modeling themselves on God's benign rulership, have pursued power at the expense of their subjects. But regardless of whether you have authority over many or just a few, like your kids or people you may supervise at work, The divine model of governance challenges us to overcome those selfish impulses of aggrandizement and instead to be benign and caring over those who God has placed in our charge. This is symbolized every Friday night at the Shabbat table by the blessing of our children. Bracha, blessing, is the opposite of korban, sacrifice, because by blessing what we're saying is, you're not mine to consume, to exploit. Rather, I want you to grow into your own person. Blessing has two parts, giving roots and then wings. Roots remind us of where we came from. And in order to know where you're going, you need to know where you came from. To our sons we say, Yismaha Elohim k'Ephraim v'Menashe. May God make you like Ephraim and Menashe. To our daughters we say, Yismecha Elohim k'Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah. May God make you like Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah. These are their roots. This is where our children came from. Then we give them wings. We're saying, take these teachings and use these teachings to enhance your life, for our mutual parent in heaven has blessed you. Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. May the Lord bless and safeguard you. Yeranai panav alecha v'chunecha. May the Lord shine his face upon you. Yisadnai panav alecha v'yisem lecha shalom. May the Lord lift his face to you and give you peace. Take these values and grow up and become your own person. This is the bracha. This is the blessing that we bestow upon you. We emulate God by raising up those who he has given us charge over.